call me Professor P, and I'm the Director of Interdisciplinary Engineering Studies and Multidisciplinary Engineering. And I'm here to share a little bit of information with you tonight. I have two special guests, Rayvant Tomby and John Danstrom. And John and Rayvant are going to talk a little bit about their stories in a little bit. But in the meantime, we'll get started. And I have a question. First of all, I can't see any of your hands, but I'm hoping if I ask you how many of you have heard of IDE and MDE, many of you have your hands up and you're waving them at me wildly. But I wonder how many of you have heard of MDE and IDE in relationship to purple squirrels. I can't really see your hand, so it's hard to see if there's even one person raising their hand. But in IDE and MDE, purple squirrels are really our mascot, you might say. They're our mascot because for companies that are looking for special people to recruit in to hire, they refer to them as purple squirrels because they're looking for these special people that are hard to find, that have just the right education and experience, qualifications, and they have the ability to look at problems from what they call a multifaceted perspective. And in MDE, that's what we really work hard to do. We work hard to help students get a broad perspective of all disciplines of engineering, but most importantly, to be respectful and to think about a problem from lots of different angles so that they can solve and come up with some of the best solutions. And so in ID and MDE, we're really the home of purple squirrels, where students who think about engineering differently and think about where engineering and great engineering minds can go, find a home and a place that they feel like they can do great work and interesting work. So I mentioned that there's a program IDES and a program MDE. Really, between these two, it's a choice of whether you're interested in a Bachelor of Science degree or a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. In MDE, MDE is a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. IDES is a Bachelor of Science degree. But both of these programs are geared for students who have interests that are broader than just engineering. So if you were a student who came to Purdue and you were really wondering, do I go into engineering or do I go into management? Do I go into healthcare or do I go into engineering? I kind of like civil, but I kind of like biomedical. So if you're in that sort of mindset, then maybe MDE or IDES is right for you. It's not a place for someone who's necessarily confused, but it's more a place for students who have lots of interest and want to find a way to bring those interests together. We are purposely going tonight last because you've had the chance to hear about all of the other engineering programs. And I hope that maybe one of those was a perfect match for you. But if none of them were quite right, if they weren't quite the right fit for you because you have lots of different interests, or maybe you have this unique, crazy idea of how you want to bring engineering and something else together, then MDE and IDES might be the right place for you. We're not really the place if you are interested in double majoring. That's kind of not what we do. It's not about putting two things squarely together. It's about finding this interesting in-between space, this niche sort of space, you might think. And it's also not a pathway. If maybe you're interested in a program that's full and you didn't get in maybe, or you won't get in, you're worried you won't get in, this is not a way that you travel through and back into something else. This is a destination in its own right. So it's really important to understand that. So a little bit more about the difference between IDS and MDE. Most of my students are MDE students, but a few are in IDES. Those few are interested maybe in something like going into law or medicine. And so having this engineering background, a little bit of engineering, helps them really be very competitive as they approach law school or medical school. Some students just want to have some engineering background. Maybe they got into first year engineering and they realized maybe engineering isn't exactly what they wanted, but they still really value that technical background. Maybe they want to go into sales or even supply chain. Then IDES might be right for them. MDE, on the other hand, is for students who really want to do engineering work every day. And they've realized that they're good at solving problems and creating solutions. I did say solving, not making problems, right? Solving problems and making solutions. And they want to do engineering work every day. So again, I said that one thing that we don't do is try and sell MDE or IDES to you, but it might be right for you if what you're looking for is a more flexible program where, like I said, you have lots of different interests and you're trying to figure out how to marry those interests together. It's also a really good place, as I said, if you have a clear mind on what it is you're looking for. You may not know what to call it quite yet, and you may not even be sure what your work might look like ultimately, but you know what you like to do, and you know that engineering is a key part of that. And if that's the feelings that you're having, then MDE might be the right place for you. Now, we don't have alligators at MDE, but I thought that sign was really cool, so I just wanted to use it if I can be completely honest. MDE may not be the right place for you if you really are motivated by having a path of complete certainty. One of the things that MDE offers you is a lot of flexibility. And so with flexibility comes a lot of responsibility. You have to think about what courses do you want to take? You have to do research on those courses, understand how they're valuable to you. And so in other programs, your coursework will be mostly laid out for you. Maybe you'll only have a couple choices. In MDE, you'll have many, many choices, at least 10, and oftentimes more than that. So if making decisions doesn't feel like something that you like and you really don't want to have to figure out your pathway, then again, our program may not be a good fit for you. But if you're someone who loves making your own decisions, you already have a lot of ideas, then we might be right. Sometimes people talk about MDE as the incubator of the next big engineering discipline at Purdue. And maybe some of you don't know that both biomedical and EEE, environmental, ecological, engineering, were all born in MDE. And that began with one student who said, hey, Professor Pilot or other professors, right? Couldn't you put engineering and something else together? And it started out as one student doing a special plan of study, and then more students saying, hey, I want to do something like that too, to the point that, for example, environmental and ecological engineering became so big that it became its own school, as did biomedical. And so in IDE and MDE, we really listen closely to what students are interested in because we know that they're helping us figure out what the next big engineering trend is. They're helping us create the next engineering disciplines. And some of the more recent disciplines that have been created are theater engineering, maybe you've heard of that, which involves really the whole entertainment industry and engineering, or even humanitarian engineering, where last year we graduated our very first humanitarian engineer. So for students who have thoughts about new ways of doing engineering, this might be the place for you. So academically, there are really big differences between IDE and MDE. MDE is an ABET accredited program, and that's equivalent to most all of the other engineering programs at Purdue. That's really important in two ways. First of all, it establishes that you can go on and you can become a professional engineer if you want that certification. For some fields, for some interest areas, that's very, very important. One thing I will tell you is if you do pursue even a fundamentals of engineering exam in pursuit of becoming a professional engineer, it can be worth some additional money as you go out into the workplace. So belonging to an ABET accredited program is something to keep in mind. We also then require 45 credits of core engineering, just like every other or most every other engineering program. IDES, as I mentioned earlier, is not ABET accredited because you don't have as much engineering. And again, it's on a different pathway. So pursuing your professional licensure isn't important or really desired for those students. I will say that our total program is 120 credits, not that that matters to you, but just in case for some of you who are keeping track of that. So let's move a little bit into some plans of study and get on to more important things, having John and Revant talk about their experiences, which I know you all would much rather hear them talk than hear me talk. If you're interested in the big overall MDE program, you can go to our website and find all of the information. Here you can see a diagram of the 8 semesters. The important part to look at is really along the right-hand side where those white boxes are, because the white boxes are really where you have a lot of choice and decisions to make. And so if you compare that maybe to another program that you're interested in, you'll see quite a bit of difference there. So you may be wondering, so how does this progress? Well, it progresses in the following ways. You all are in first year engineering, and you're going to have some sophomore math, physics, and core engineering. And every engineering program has the common first year engineering and a sophomore math, physics, and core engineering. The difference is in MDE, we tell you, you need to take a statics class, or you need to take a dynamics class, or an economics class. We just don't tell you which one you have to take. So if you're interested in civil engineering areas, you could take your fluids in civil engineering, or you could take your statics in mechanical engineering, or ag and biological engineering. Maybe your interests are such that by taking those courses in those other areas, it benefits you in a unique way. And so that's what makes us a little bit different. When you look at a transcript, if you looked at Revant and John's transcript, you would see lots of different engineering disciplines represented on their transcript. We teach our own courses. It's a core of design courses and professional development courses with our own faculty. I'm one of those faculty, as are another 5 or 6 others that we have teaching. We have many concentrations within MDE. So MDE is our program name, and then you have a specialized concentration. You can see the list of concentrations here. I want to draw one point of attention to you that if theater engineering is an area that you're interested in, we have a limit of only 4 theater engineers per cohort. So it's very, very competitive. And the 4 are selected based on a portfolio review that happens in April. So for your cohort, it would happen in April of 2021. So if that's a concentration that you're interested in, you'll want to get with our advisor soon and learn about how you put together that portfolio so you can be the most competitive candidate possible. The existing IDES concentrations are engineering science studies and pre-med, pre-law, and pre-vet. I also will mention, if you notice, there's something called a self-design plan of study. And that's for students who maybe acoustical, engineering management, all the other ones that you see listed here aren't quite right. They want to create something very, very unique just for themselves. And in that case, then we work with them to see if that's possible. You can only create a self-design plan if no other program across Purdue can fulfill that degree requirement. So it's a very, very unique plan. We don't have many of them often, but I will talk about one here in a few minutes. To give you a feel for popularity, I guess, or distribution of our student interest across all of the concentrations, acoustical engineering and general engineering are two of the most common or popular. For those of you, acoustical engineering makes perfect sense to be in multidisciplinary engineering because it's a combination of electromechanical, potentially architectural, and then it even involves speech, hearing, and pathology, or even theater, sound, and music. And so that's how a concentration like acoustical fits in with MDE. So if you think of other combinations, you can start to see how, for example, engineering management that Rivant's going to talk about in a little bit, or even visual design that John's going to talk about in a second, fits in. We also have lighting engineering, nano, humanitarian, and theater. I think I mentioned those earlier. In total, we're only about 110 students. So we're one of the smaller schools, but we're just large enough that we have community. We're about half female and about 17% underrepresented, if that's important to you. And we normally admit about 12 students per cohort. Now we're going to get into a few stories. I'm going to speak on behalf of an alumni who graduated several years ago and give you Anne Marie's story. Anne Marie was a special student because she did the self-design pathway. And I'll just walk you through her story quickly. Anne Marie was our first and only fashion design engineer, first and only in the 51-year history of our program. Anne Marie loved fashion. You would see her coming and going, and she was always wearing unique and cool clothes. She also loved to sew, and she had this amazing interest for recycling. She hated seeing people get rid of clothes that maybe from her perspective still had a life. And she would take those clothes and turn them into unique products or rework them into new clothes. And she also was this amazing pattern maker. And so through her fashion design engineering, which involved courses over in the College of Liberal Arts and Engineering, she was able to pull together a plan that involved not only creating patterns, cutting patterns efficiently, supply chain and design into her own unique plan of study. She's an apparel designer in New York City. I can't mention the brand or they'll make me pay for sharing their trademark, but I can tell you it's a very large brand, and she was the very first engineer they had ever hired there. She's making custom tuxedos for some very, very, very famous people in Hollywood. And she's so busy, she almost never comes back to visit us, but she always sends her love at the holiday time. So I just wanted to give you an example of a very unique situation with a very unique student who had some unique interest areas, but was strong in her engineering and her desire to engineer, and she made it special for her. So now we get to talk to some live people, and I get to stop talking for a second. We'll start with John, and then we'll have Rivant chime in. And so John, you can take it from here.
All right. So hi, everyone. My name is John. I'm a senior in multidisciplinary, and my concentration is in visual design engineering. So one of the things that originally got me into engineering was I live up in Michigan. And if you want to go ahead and click here.
Okay.
And one of the things you see, especially down near Detroit and Dearborn, is you see a lot of these vehicles with camouflage wrapping on them. And so that always got me really interested in prototyping and early product development. And one of the things in particular is, if you want to go ahead and click again, is taking a design or taking a product from its early stages and sketching and like really simple mock-ups like here, and then how it progresses through the design process into a later design, and then the final product. And so one of the things that the MDE program has allowed me to do is take those core engineering courses that Professor P mentioned before, statics, dynamics, thermo, In addition to that, I've taken a lot of CAD courses in the CGT major. And then right now I'm taking courses in art and design, trying to get a slightly more industrial design knowledge under my belt just to help on early product development and prototyping. And here you can see one of the classes that I've been able to work on that I found really helpful for that, and that is ME 444, which is, I think it's titled Computer Aided Drafting and Rapid Prototyping, but everyone just calls it toy design. And so here you can see something that we really briefly brought up. You go back to the first one, sorry. One more back, sorry. And so it's just a simple 4-bar mechanism for steering. And then we were able to take this and then turn it into parts for our steering mechanism, as you can see here. And then we ended up 3D printing those, testing them. We had to go back and make revisions. And so we went back, refitted them, reprinted them, and then we ended up fitting them to our complete RC car for a project that we have to do. And that was really just a great experience of taking something from a really early stage, just like how do we design a steering mechanism? All we know is we have the wheels and we have the servo. How do you design something, and then taking that to the final project? And that's really just something the MD program has allowed me to do here at Purdue, just hone in on those classes and that coursework that really benefits what I want to do. And you know, I think it's a great opportunity if that's something that you feel like would benefit you.
Okay, thank you, John. Rayvon, what would you like to share?
Thanks, Professor. Hi, everyone. My name is Rayvon Thambi. I'm from Jaipur, India. I actually didn't join MDE right out of FIE, but I coded into MDE last year. So I think 3 years back, I was sitting those chairs, knowing that I wanted to do ME. I was like, I love prototyping. I love creating stuff and being in the labs and creating stuff. So I kind of didn't listen to all the presentations and like directly went to ME, and it was great because I took all those core classes that Professor P mentioned as a part of my ME curriculum as well. But slowly, when I progressed up the ladder, I took my internship. So I think first summer I was working as a research assistant in a chemical engineering lab. So it was definitely not related to ME, but it got me the hang of thinking on how a chemical engineer would think. Then next summer, I was working as a product manager back in Cape Town. And that's when I started to get into entrepreneurship and started I had this idea of creating something, a business out of it. So when I came back to Purdue last fall, I still liked prototyping, but I wanted to combine those ideas of having to prototype something with entrepreneurship and business management. While I was pursuing business management at the same time, I wanted to take classes from IE and other coding classes from electrical engineering. So that was like the tipping point when I felt like, oh, I wanted to codo, and I didn't want to extend my time at Purdue just because I wanted to go out in the real world and quickly get up and running with my idea. So I started looking at different courses here at Purdue, and that's when I met Ms. Peckney and Professor P, who introduced me to this flexible curriculum of MDE and IDE. So good news is I'm still graduating on time despite the fact that I changed my major. I'm getting to do my entrepreneurship and count it towards my credits, getting to combine that engineering mindset with the management mindset and kind of becoming an entrepreneurial engineer that I dreamt of becoming last year. And thankfully the system over here supported that change. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give to people who are still figuring out what they want to do and have figured out what they want to do is just, I would say, see if you want to create your own courses and take your own courses, because there are some majors who don't provide that much flexibility and have a certain path to reaching your degree. But I definitely recommend talking to Ms. Peckney and seeing if it fits well with your engineering perspective, engineering credits, and also like other classes that you can take at different colleges here at Purdue. Like I want to be a T-shaped person where I have deep knowledge of one specific discipline and broad knowledge of how it interacts with other discipline. And thank you so much and I thank the MDE program and the ID program for giving me that support to fulfill that. And I'll have Professor P take over for now.
Great. Thanks, guys. That was really helpful. And I hope for those of you listening, you have some questions in your mind stirring around for John or Revant, because when we're done, we'll open it up for questions. And I encourage you to ask them anything that you like, or me too. We'll be glad to answer your questions. Okay. Let's see, here we go. So some advantages you might have heard John and Revant talk about is flexibility, finding some of those courses that you like, being able to go deep in an area like Revant said, but also the ability to go wide and broad and maybe a little shallower, right? The ability to select your core engineering courses from across disciplines, and then again, having those electives, those 5 engineering electives and 5 areas of interest that might be engineering or non-engineering. And as we mentioned earlier, we're small, but because of that, for better or for worse, we know each other very, very well. And my students, John and Revant, will say, oh yes, I've had Professor P a couple of times, right, in classes as an instructor. So I'm not just the director of the program. I spend time with the students and really try and get to know them and help them, because we believe that you're smart enough to get into Purdue, you're smart enough to get out of Purdue, and to be excellent as you exit, no matter what it is that you want to do. And Ms. Peckney is an award-winning advisor. She certainly gives her heart and soul to every student, giving them the best advice possible, and really taking time with them to help them along the way. Oftentimes I'm asked about research, industry, and career, so I'll just cover that quickly. And if you have additional questions, we'll answer those. We do have students in research. Normally we have about 20% of our student body involved in some sort of research. It might be traditional research, like at a Herrick laboratory, where maybe they're working on sound or lighting or reducing vibrations, something along those lines. Or they could be doing research that involves Powell Hall. Again, maybe with sound and performance, or even creating devices to work on the stage. So because we think of research differently, we even have students who work through SURF over in Wang Hall and engineering education. You may have heard about the toy guide that came out just this week from Purdue that comes from the School of Engineering Education. Multidisciplinary engineering is in the School of Engineering Education, and they hire lots of undergraduate students to work and do research there. Students also get the opportunity to engage industry, whether it's like Revant, who's doing something very entrepreneurial on his own, and is associated with the Entrepreneurship Center and certificates, or whether it's like Capstone. Sometimes we engage industry. This was from a couple years ago. Capstone was focused on making process improvements at a local Alcoa operation. A couple of years ago, we worked with Juno Lighting up in Chicago, and we were designing improved lighting experiences using LED lighting, and trying to think about new product lines and ways to innovate with Juno Lighting. I believe this year's capstone is around the theme of personal safety and wellness. So the theme really changes every year, and the students in the capstone bring their knowledge, their interest area, and their expertise to make the most of capstone. You're also allowed to take epics for capstone. So that's another interesting option that doesn't exist in all of the engineering disciplines that might be interesting to you. And I think Revant would be able to answer some questions about that. He's an epics capstone. Students ask about where our students go to work. They go to work everywhere, just like every other engineering discipline. They go to work in large companies like John Deere and small companies like Klipsch. They're in the energy sector, they're in automotive, they're in high fashion in New York City, right? So it's hard to put our students in any one box. They're everywhere. We have everything from neuroscientists to NASCAR drivers, and everything in between. So I mentioned we're small, we build community, we spend time together in the area normally called the Nest. We've been in a little bit of a quarantine. We haven't been able to enjoy our Nest area, but we're hoping we can get that open. And that's a great place that you have to study and to build community and to get to know each other. That was last year's graduating cohort. I have a group about that large again this year to graduate. And so it's really nice from my perspective that we can all fit on one page together. We're small enough we can all graduate together every year. And our students get to know each other and help each other, because engineering really is a team sport, and it does take a community of people to really encourage you and study with you along the way, so that you can all finish successfully. Our students do really well when they graduate. Our placement rates are very competitive with other placement rates. You can look this information up online. And so is our employment levels. I mean, I think everyone will suffer a little bit this year with COVID, and the numbers are always 1 year in arrears. But also our students go on, if they want to pursue a master's degree, it's not uncommon for students to go on into data science or acoustics or even design and other areas. I mean, it's just really what your interests are. And because you're in an ABET accredited program, whatever it is that you want to do, you can pursue, assuming that you've maintained your grade. So that's the important factor there. So some things that might be considered disadvantages: we are smaller. So if you like being part of something big, we're not that. We're not that. And you have to really spend some time to know yourself. That can be uncomfortable. I know for some of our students, Revant would probably, and John would be able to talk about, when they first get into our professional development classes and we really talk about what is it you want to do and where you want to go. That's a lot of hard work. And when you graduate and work in some of the other disciplines, it's kind of a given. You don't have to think so much about that. So there is more self-discovery work that you do in our program. And because of that, that's super important to get to know yourself well, so that you can articulate your skills and abilities to employers. And that's what really allows our placement to stay high in that 85, 86, 87% placement. Very, very competitive. So I think I'll stop there and open it up to questions. I'm going to stop sharing so that hopefully you can turn on your cameras and we can see you. That way, if you have any questions, feel free to turn on your camera. And I think, Revant, have you been monitoring the chat? Do we have any questions on the chat?
We do have a lot of great questions, actually. So I think Harry wants to know about the co-op and study abroad opportunities for students in MDE.
Yes, so we do have co-op opportunities in MDE. There might be, say, 5 or 6 at a time, not like 30, but there are a few, and those numbers are growing, and we're very excited about that. And up until COVID, yes, some of our students, a large number actually, do participate in study abroad, and our students do too. Up until all of this, I used to take a cohort to Australia over spring break, where we did a very fast-paced, week-long design immersion experience, but you can actually participate in any study abroad all across campus. So hopefully we'll all get healthy and we'll get this COVID thing behind us, and we'll all be traveling and experiencing the world again soon.
Yeah, and there was a question in there as well about the similarities between mechanical engineering and the visual design engineering program. I'd say that based on what you asked, the core classes are really similar. I ended up taking ME 200, 270, 370 sets, thermostatics and dynamics, all in mechanical engineering. And then the other core classes, so hydro and then mechanics and materials, you had the option to take them in the ME program, but I ended up taking them in nuclear and civil. But I'd say the main difference is that you're going to have a lot more freedom than in the ME program. I was able to take a lot of courses in industrial engineering, and a couple of those were, and they had a 3D modeling class that I took and a class on manufacturing processes. So I'd just say the main difference is the amount of freedom and choice you have in the visual design engineering program compared to the mechanical engineering program, if that answered your question.
Great.
Professor P, there was one more question about the Purdue gift guide, and if they were asking if it was a part of the MDE program.
So not part of the MDE program, but we had several students who worked on that particular project. And if you noticed when we were talking about concentrations, there's actually an educational engineering program that we have. I haven't had any students in that program, but that's designed for someone who's interested in going on, maybe getting their master's in education or even their PhD in engineering education, but merging together engineering and education. So yeah, that's an option, an unexplored option so far.
I think George had a question about self-designing the plan of study at MDE. I would have, if he's still here, John, if you could unmute yourself and ask that question directly to Professor P, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So, no, just the kind of engineering I was, well, kind of thinking about, I guess, I'm not sure that I want to do it, is not one of the, like, whatever ones you've listed. So if I did want to try and get into that specific one, when would I want to go about doing that? Like, would I have to set that up before or after I get accepted into the school? And then if I didn't end up getting that plan of study approved, would it then be like a chore to get coded into like a regular engineering?
So our advice to all students is, if you're in doubt about either whether you're fully committed to a self-design or not, then you should go into a program that gives you a little more security. That's
Okay.
number one. But if you start in that other program and you say, oh no, this is just far too rigid, it's not giving me enough of that flexibility, I really do want a self-design pathway, then you need to do that before the end of your sophomore year.
Okay.
Because there's an approval process. So
Right.
what we do is we have you fill out, we have this orchestrated process where you really do some deep thinking about what it is you want to do, and you start putting the courses together and idealizing what you may want to call this new engineering thing. And then we go through it to make sure that it meets all of the ABET accreditation requirements. It goes for a curriculum committee and we vote on it. And then if there's any changes or massages that need to be made, we do that. And then you're on your pathway.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
So it is kind of a longer process.
Right.
For the right student, it's the right process.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
There was one more about, does MDE help you get more opportunities or does it hurt your chances? I think I can talk a little bit about it and then John can also probably add in. I think Professor P said that with that flexibility comes a lot of challenges, but I think with that challenges comes a lot of opportunities, at least for me. Just because like when I was at ME, I was directly getting like manufacturing internship, which I really didn't want. But when I told them that I was a part of MDE, they gave me a chance to tell my story. So that's the kind of challenge that you have to go for, but the benefits are amazing because I got opportunities that were geared towards my interests and basically what I wanted to do. So I think that's the story of my side. I can have John and Professor P talk about it.
Yeah, I think that there are challenges, especially if you're at like a career fair. Maybe not all the recruiters are going to come knowing exactly what the MDE program is. So you have to really be able to pitch yourself and what you have done at Purdue and what you want to or can bring to their company. I say that's really the only challenge. Most of the time when I've interacted with recruiters, they've been really interested in what I've learned and haven't really seen any weaknesses just because my resume says MDE instead of ME or IE. I think that there are challenges, but I don't think they're super big to creating anything. And then there was one question in here about reaching out to different professors because of difference in disciplines. I haven't had any issue with that. I don't think many professors would really know that I was in MD unless I told them. So I haven't had any issues reaching out or to other faculty or anything outside of the program at all. I think everyone's been really easy to work with.
Rayvon, do you have anything to add to that?
That is true. And I think just because you are taking classes from so many different disciplines, you get to know professors and experts from so many different disciplines. Like when you go into your senior design, I was able to talk to a professor from School of Agriculture that I just got to know from one of my classes and through different professors. That is a good added benefit, I think, about the program instead of a missed opportunity.
And we definitely spend a lot of time really building relationships with the various schools because we value everyone's expertise, no matter what discipline they're in. We just happen to be the place where we get to bring all of that together in a unique way. So, you know, we don't believe that one discipline is better than another. What we're hoping for is students find the best discipline for them, whatever discipline that is.
And then there was a couple questions, one on the nanotechnology concentration, and then another one about possible coursework for a human factors or ergonomics engineering degree.
So the nanotechnology one I'll talk about first. There's multiple tracks in nanotechnology. You can go the physics track or the material science track. It's a very physics heavy curriculum. I think the only program that takes more physics than nanotech concentration is a physics major. So you have to love your physics and your mathematics. But yeah, there's a couple different pathways, and you can go out onto the My Purdue site and see more about what that curriculum looks like and your choices. And I think there was a question, what was the other? Human factors. So if you're interested in human factors, really probably industrial engineering is going to be the right pathway for you because they have several human factors courses. It would only be if you had some far-reaching, let's say somehow you wanted to combine prosthetics and product development and human factors, then maybe there would be a triangulation, but just a pure on human factors, that's industrial engineering all the way.
I think Ellie, I think she was talking about human factor design and combining it with ergonomic engineering degree.
Ah, okay. So that might be like an interesting combination in visual design. So you could certainly, you know, focus on the human factors element in visual design. Would you agree with that, John? Just by taking a few more IE courses?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I have, and I'm actually in right now, the human factors and ergonomics course in IE. So you definitely can pivot the visual design to focus more on that if that's what you're interested in.
Yep. Was there
Sorry,
something about theater engineering?
Yeah, I was going to say people want to know about what's the competition like at for theatrical engineering. My bad. Sorry.
Yeah, so our theater engineering concentration has turned out to be white hot. Everybody is clamoring for it. So I will tell you that last year there were 10 students who wanted theater engineering and 4 made it. So it's very competitive, I would say. And if you don't make it, you have a choice then to either go into the discipline that you're interested into or in general engineering.
And then there was another question that I can answer real quick, again, about the visual design engineering. So sophomore year, I'd say, was when I was taking core classes. So those were the ME courses. And then junior and senior year, I was able to take one course a semester last year, focusing more on computer-aided drafting, so in the CGT major. And then this year, I've been able to take quite a bit more on both CGT and art and design, so industrial design. So yeah, I'd say through sophomore year, I was almost identical to what Emmy was in. I know someone that was in Emmy and we were all in the same classes, so that was actually really helpful. But yeah, through sophomore year, you're going to be identical, almost 1 or 2 classes different. And then after that is really where you're able to branch out and go into your own coursework.
I see questions about engineering management concentration. I think I can answer a few and then I can turn it over to you for some more specifics. So I'm pursuing engineering management, and coming back to the point of the way it's weighted, like more of engineering and less of management, I think it's more like the credit system in MDE and IDE. So it's like 45 engineering credits, which is based upon how you want to use your engineering credits. Mostly my credits came from mechanical engineering, so I got a great hang of mechanical engineering and like a great focus in mechanical engineering, where I knew I could go forward with prototyping and actually use that in my epics and senior design. While at the same time I was pursuing my management minor and my entrepreneurship certificate. So they were comparatively less than the engineering classes, but the best part was it was counting towards my degree and coming together as engineering management on my records.
Yeah, and I would just echo what Revant said. It's not unusual for our students to have, their concentration plus a minor plus a certificate. And in a typical program, a certificate might be on top of the credits that you would have to achieve the 120 or 125 credits, where in our program, the flexibility often allows you to achieve that minor and the certificate and still stay relatively close to that 120 number. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about acoustical engineering, Professor P?
Sure. So acoustical engineering has 2 tracks also. So again, we don't do anything simple in MDE. We like to really mess it up a lot. So in acoustics, you have a pathway of sound design that tends to be for people who want to improve sound experience for humans. So that might be through venues, it might be through microphones, it might be through hearing devices, or even hearing aids. It could be for musical performance, or it could be, like I said, associated with health products. The second track is called noise, harshness, and vibration. And that tends to be acoustics for reducing the influence of sound on our everyday life. So that might be making engines be quieter, making rooms be less noisy with the HVAC or the lighting. It might be designing highways and airports so that the sound doesn't encroach on the local neighborhoods. It could be involving underwater acoustics and working in the naval warfare or even with animals. We have a student who went on to get his PhD, and he's working on underwater robots that listen to ice crack to understand how global warming is impacting our icebergs. And so it's just fascinating where our acousticians go, but it tends to be 2 groups, either kind of the musical and health group or more of the lived environment group is how I would describe that.
Professor Pilat, I can show the QR code now while you continue answering questions, if that works.
Great, thank you, Bhavini. Any final questions?
There was one more with Jessica. I thought Jessica, it was, how does MDE vary from a specialization within different engineering major? I think just from my perspective, I would say that just keep an eye out before you select a major. Don't make assumptions about the plan of study, but just go ahead and look at the plan of study and see what kind of flexibility it offers. I can only talk about specifically ME, but I think they are trying to change the system right now to make it more flexible, but it was not as flexible or specialized as I wanted in design. So I think MDE worked best for me, but I would definitely check out plan study for both both the engineering concentration and MDE.
I would just say if you have any final questions, feel free to reach out to Ms. Packney or myself. The information will be shared through first year engineering. And I would also say, I hope that every one of you find the perfect choice for you, no matter what discipline that is. That's the goal. We want you to be happy and find the discipline that's right for you. But if a year down the road, you find that you're not loving your engineering discipline as much as you thought, we hope that this meeting will make you remember something, that a little memory in the back of your mind, and you'll reach out to Ms. Packney or myself, and we can begin maybe helping you remember what you loved about engineering at Purdue and get back on track so that you can graduate and be a successful and happy engineer in a field in an area that you love. So with that, I hope you have a great evening. I want to thank John and Rayvant for helping me tonight. Thank you, gentlemen.
Professor B.
Anything else, Bhavini? I think she's working.
Sorry, I
I
was trying to unmute myself. It's so hard to find when you're sharing your screen. No, nothing else. Once they're done recording their attendance, the students can leave. And then
All righty. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. John, Rayvant, have a good evening.
You too.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for everyone for showing out.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you.